Thank you very much, Musa, for that. Today's number should become tomorrow's reality. That's why we have our guest here to break down all these technicalities so that Nigerians can understand where we are going. There's so much optimism in the air. But let's just welcome our guest. First, Dr. Victor Obo. He is the Director of Monetary Policy Department, Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN. Dr. Obo, it's good to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, Nigerian. I'm happy to be here.
All right. We are happy to have you too. Also joining us, as usual, Professor Uche Uwaleke is the President of the Association of Capital Market Academics. Prof, good to see you again.
Thank you very much, Damola. Good morning, Nigeria. I'm very pleased to be here.
All right. Claire.
Yes, all right. We also have Dr. Leo Elias, an economist. He's right here with us in our studio. Dr. Elias, thank you very much for joining us. Good morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
All right. Okay, fine.
So
let's, Dr. Obo, let's start with Dr. Obo. So that's, I mean, there's so much optimism in the air now. For the past 5 months, there have been consistent de-inflation, and people are looking for the reality, just like that the background report says. So tell us what informed, the CBN's decision to reduce the MPR by 50 basis points this time. And you think this step is in the right direction?
Thank you very much, and good morning, Nigerians. It's been a long journey, and at least we are not totally out of the wood, but definitely Nigerians will agree with me that we are not where we started from. There have been some significant improvements, stability in the macroeconomic environment. First and foremost, the Monetary Policy Committee met in the last 2 days to deliberate and take decision on interest rates, as usual. But this particular meeting came after recording 5 consecutive, decline in headline inflation. Of significant interest are the numbers that was released in the month of August. For the month of August, we had straight decline across all the measures of inflation. And that is quite heartwarming. Particularly if you look at the momentum of disinflation in August, you saw that it was quantum, 1.76 percentage point decrease in headline inflation. If you compare that to the previous month of July, it was just 0.34. So that gave us a lot of impetus. So you can see that the Monetary Policy Committee has been watching the pace of decline. People were asking after the month of July why, we wouldn't have to cut rate. But we say we needed to be sure that what we are observing as a decline is something that is sustainable, so that we don't go into an issue of a relapse, So the first reason why the MPC had to do that is that they were quite comfortable that this decline is significant and is able to be sustainable. That's on the one point. The other major reason is also the fact that the projections, the forecast for inflation for the rest of the year has also shown that this trend of disinflation will continue, particularly with the onset of the harvest season. So this gives us another comfort.
Okay.
The last point, and very important also, is the fact that the Monetary Policy Committee need to support economic recovery. So anytime there is a little headroom to be able to provide that support to economic recovery, we do that. Because after all, what is the essence of monetary policy formulation and implementation? Is to provide a conducive environment to achieve sustainable growth. Maybe I stop here at this point.
All right, Doctor, thank you. But just before I bring in,
Professor Waleke.
Yes, Professor Waleke and Dr. Elias, I'm just wondering, because when you give us this, your outcomes of your meeting, you tell us that this is a unanimous, agreement. I'm just wondering what's the composition of this committee, and that came out with this unanimous decision. Did they have a choice?
Yes. Thank you very much. You get to know from the CBN Act of 2007, which specifies the composition of MPC members. They are appointed by Mr. President, and they are independent-minded. You get the point. But they do rigorous work. First and foremost, there's need for Nigerians to commend the members of the MPC. Almost all through their meetings, all the 12 members are always in attendance. Some of these members live outside the shores of Nigeria, working elsewhere. So there is independence among them. What it indicates is that they undergo rigorous, reporting, screening of data, of reports, prepare a lot of reports. So that provide them, and by the time they go for that meeting, there is a lot of reports that they read, brainstorming. So the whole of the first day of the MPC is about brainstorming.
What happens when you don't have a unanimous agreement?
The majority carries the vote.
Okay.
In a situation where there's no unity, everybody is free to be independent. And let me remind you, even after this meeting, you're going to see what we call their personal statements. And it's published on the website of the Central Bank of Nigeria.
Okay, they have personal
statements, which they submit. If you go to the Central Bank of Nigeria website, and, you will see each of them with their personal statements. All right. What they think about the decisions.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you.
Professor Uche, I'm just wondering, if you look at the interest rates, it's just 50 basis points.
Yes.
I mean, we hear of these points and all that.
Yes.
Last time it was moved from 27 to 0.50%.
Yes.
Now the 50 basis points have been taken off, and
yes.
Nigerians will say, this is just like when you have a bowl of rice. Yeah. You just remove one grain of rice out of the plate.
Yes.
And you are saying you have
absolutely.
Yes. Please,
yes.
Can you explain that?
Yes, absolutely. It's actually very small. Permit me to come from the classroom now, for the benefit of your viewers who don't have financial background. When we say 50 basis points, we mean 0.5%. Okay, 1% is equivalent to 100 basis points. So when you reduce by 50%, by 50 basis points, it means 0.5%. Okay, so the reduction from 27.5 to 27 is 0.5%, which is 50 basis points. Again, why the concern around that rate? That rate is called monetary policy rate. What is monetary policy rate? It is simply the rate at which the central bank lends money to other banks, in the central bank's capacity as lender of last resort. So when the central bank lends money to a bank, for example, okay, at a rate, for the bank to on-lend to their customers, of course, they will have to add to it. So they higher that rate, they higher the cost of credit. So what happens is that the central bank not only specifies that middle rate, 27%, they also come up with what is called an asymmetric corridor, or a corridor.
Yes,
a corridor around, it doesn't have to be asymmetry now, around the monetary policy rate. It's also important I explain that. Now, before yesterday, what we had was a symmetric corridor of plus 500 minus 100. So when you say...
Can you break that?
Yes, I'm trying to explain it.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So when you say plus 500, so when the central banks, said in July that monetary policy rates was going to be 27.5% plus an asymmetric corridor of 500, okay, minus 100, it means that when the central bank is doing that lending, it is going to add 5% on top of the 27.5%. So it's actually lending to banks at 32.5%. Okay, so that is called the standing lending window. So when banks come to borrow from the central bank will add that 5%. So the minus, yes, the upper band of the yes. plus 5. So the minus 1, okay, or 100 basis points means that when banks now have surplus funds and they want to also deposit with the central bank will pay them interest, will reward them at that 27.5 minus 1.
Minus 1.
Yeah, so the interest they pay them is 26.5%. Okay, so what they have done now is to say, okay, we have noticed that a lot of you are coming to park money with us, okay, because of the high interest we are giving you. Okay, we want to discourage that. We want you to lend money amongst yourselves. We want you to, strengthen interbank transactions instead of coming to us to bring the money. So the central bank has now reduced the interest they are paying to banks that come to deposit money with them. So if you notice, the corridor now is now symmetric. It's plus 250 minus 250. So what it means is that if banks come to park money with the central bank will now pay that interest at 27 minus 2.5, which is 24.5, lower than the 26.5 they were doing before. Okay? So again, the central bank has reduced... Yes, I'm trying to... yes.
Prof, go ahead.
Yeah, so the central bank has also reduced, again, in order to put more money in the system, okay? Part of the easing they're doing now, it's not just the rate they reduced. They also reduced that asymmetric corridor from plus 5 to plus 2.5. So now when banks come to borrow money, they will now give them at 27 plus 2.5, which is 29.5, as opposed to 32.5 they were giving. So banks are in turn expected to also reflect that in their lending rates. Okay? But there's another thing the central bank has also done, which the public needs to know. Central bank has reduced what is called the cash reserve requirement from 50% to 45%.
Yes, we're going to come to that because we just wanted to look at this 27.5 basis.
So that the viewers can have proper
understanding.
But it's a basket, it's a suit.
Yes.
It's a suit, and that suit includes not just the rate. They have touched on the corridor. They have also touched on the cash reserve requirement.
What you have said now, from my own understanding, it's like you are the CBN and we are the banks.
Yes.
The banks, right?
Yeah.
Instead of us coming to meet you all the time to borrow money,
do it amongst
so
yourselves.
We can do it amongst you.
Exactly.
So it's okay.
So anytime you are going to
so
CBN.
I will do it with Claire.
Yes.
I hope Claire will be fair enough. Anyway, Dr.
Please let me. I just want to ask Dr. Elias. If you look at the macro indicators,
right.
you discover that the naira is stabilizing.
Right.
You also discover that inflation is easing,
right.
For 5 consecutive months, and you also see our GDP 4.3%,
right.
From 3.13%. And I'm just wondering, this 0.5, is it commensurate with what we have, garnered so far? This macro economic picture that we are seeing,
right?
Does it reflect that?
Right. So the fact remains, even for me, I think during my expectation of MPC outcome, I was expecting 25 basis points because I was thinking there should be cautious, in the approach of it, because if you are coming down, also you must come down in a way that it will not make the inflation also goes up. And why am I coming on this perspective is that that increased interest rate is an incentive to another business as well. So for instance, let's look at our financial sector. So most people come into the sector to actually invest because they think, well, maybe they have money in the stock. They think by the time, because the interest rate is there, they come in to do business and actually enjoy. So when you are also reducing, it must also be a wrong signal for them to also look at it. Are they actually going to go away with their money? Because we could see stability in our foreign exchange. We could see, everything is, for now, we must also commend the CBN because most things are actually on the positive trajectory, which is a good one. But like I said, it is not yet, like you actually mentioned that, at least it's a step forward. So for that one, it's a good incentive for our manufacturing sector, for small businesses, because with this, we can now have confidence that, yes, I can also go to bank to borrow, at this 27%, not 27.5%. So it's a good one for the economy. It's a good, optics for the economy, both for people doing business in Nigeria and even people that
I was going to ask, because they always complain about, those in the manufacturers, exactly.
Yes.
So is this good for them? Is this
it's a good one
in terms of borrowing?
Right, it's a good one because they want something better. It's a good one simply because when manufacturing sector is able to do business, it's have a lot of positive impact. One, there will be more employment. Even our GDP that is increasing, we have more opportunity to actually accelerate the more. So I think from all the indication, we have seen that yes, we are in a positive trajectory. And looking at the next one, my other challenge is that if you look at the last inflation, it's the one before this last one, we have the food component of it accelerating, while the other one are decelerating. Now, if you look, and looking at the NBS report after the GDP rebase, discover that the food component of inflation used to be 52%. Now it has been down to 40%. Are we saying that is not why we are having decelerating food inflation, or we have actually solved the legacy problem that we are looking at? So we must balance it and make sure that in the long run we expect this to reflect and to have impact on the citizen and to increase our purchasing power.
So so it's likely to impact the borrowing, the cause credit growth, and trigger more economic activities. Is that what you're saying?
Definitely. When you have reduction in the interest rates, it definitely increase people's credit to actually do business and engage in other economic activities. It's a positive one.
But how does it affect the capital market, Professor Walike?
Okay. Now to begin with, yes, I share in his optimism. But what we have noticed, and I'm pretty sure Doctor will corroborate that, what we have noticed that most of the time, even when you find the central bank reducing the policy rate, okay, banks don't in turn translate that to reduced lending rates. Okay, so even when they do that, it's not by the same magnitude. Although banks will tell you that you don't have to blame them, they are equally part of the cost of funds. It's not just the MPR. Banks are also battling with other challenges, infrastructure challenges, in the economy, and so on. And they tend to also put those costs on the borrower. Okay, so that's why most of the time central bank will even tell you that they have issues with transmission mechanism. Okay. Transmission mechanism means that if central bank wants to reduce liquidity in the system, they will increase rates. If they want to increase it, they will reduce rates. Now, when they reduce rates, in the hope that liquidity will reduce, through the credit channel, okay, on interest rate channel, and through the credit channel, that more money will go to the risk sector, okay, that doesn't usually happen because banks don't, in turn, also reduce their lending rates. Yeah. Now, talking about the equities market, particularly when you say capital market, of course, we have segments of that. But if we stay with the equities market, okay, one expects a positive impact. Okay, there's usually this, inverse relationship between what happens in the equities market and the, bonds market, for example. So when you find interest rates going down, what happens? Investors would migrate from bonds, okay, to equities. So you find now portfolio managers rebalancing their portfolios, okay, in favor of equities. Okay, yes, I'm talking from experience. I'm the chairman of an investment an investment committee of an investment bank. So the independent director in an investment bank. So I know that what usually happens is when that happens, they rebalance in favor of equities. Because bond yields are coming down. So it's going to be positive for the equity segment of the market. No doubt.
All right. Thank you so much. We're getting grip of it. All right. We just want to once again encourage our viewers to please, you can contribute to this discussion by sending your messages, comments, questions on the number displayed on your screen. We are still, the discussion is the CBN MPC resolution yesterday. So we expect your comments and your questions so that our guests can respond to them. Let's come back to Dr. Obor now. I mean, we have seen that inflation eased for 5 months and consistently. Tell us what's really behind this drop, and do you think it will be consistent?
Thank you very much. As I said earlier on, it's been a long journey. Remember, in November 2024, inflation stood at around 34.7%. That was way, way high, you know. And moving through December after the CPI rebasing, down to January, it was still above, I think above 30, thereabout. And then the disinflation process started, and we had gradual decline. And then in March, it spiked up. And in April, we had a little relief. It came down to around 23.7%. And May, it dropped a little. June, it dropped a little. And there was a call for a rate cut, you know. And the bank, in their May MPC meeting, emphasized the need for patience so that we have sufficient deceleration, you know, up to a point before which we can cut. So what has happened is that the tightening we had, this 27.5% before the cut, had been sustained. So that effect of tightening is what we are seeing now. A prof made mention to the transmission mechanism of monetary policy. What that means is that when MPC takes a decision, it takes some time. We call it the lag effect. It takes some time for that decision to transmit through the various channels, the credit channel, the exchange rate channel, even the expectation channels, and the rest of them, before it gets to the real economy. So that lag effect is what we are seeing now. So it's largely attributable, the decline we have seen now is largely attributable to the impact of that tight monetary policy stance of the bank. So that is the major point. Now we are seeing some reasonable improvement. And then coupled with the stable exchange rate that we have. You remember in that report of yesterday, our external reserves stood at over 43 billion US dollar.
43.05
yes,
billion.
Yes, 43.05 billion US dollar.
Yes.
That gives a lot of confidence to the public and even to investors. So if people are going to speculate, going to hoard dollar, you are just wasting your time, because we have enough arsenals, to be able to defend the naira if the need arise.
But why is the naira still lagging behind the dollar at 1,400, if that is the case?
But remember that the exchange rate, the naira has actually strengthened. We were at 1,800 at one point.
In fact, at one point,
people were already speculating that we were at 2,000.
Yeah.
It has come down from there to 515. The last check, we were 1,480 something.
Is it likely to go further down?
Very likely.
You're optimistic?
But mind you, yeah, I am. But very more importantly for investors is not just the drop, is the stability.
Okay.
How stable is it? Even for consumers. If you know today that you are going to buy this cup at 200 naira, and tomorrow you're going to buy it around 200 naira.
Or less.
You are at peace.
Okay, Dr. But let me, sorry.
But something, I mean, the CBN governor said that what they are actually driving at is a single-digit,
Yes.
inflation.
Yes.
Is it possible?
Very possible.
Well,
very, very.
everything is possible.
Let me assure you.
If these measures are sustained.
Yes, let me assure you. We have our forecasters, statisticians, econometricians that sit down and project the trend, the trajectory of inflation. We have a vague idea of what inflation will be in October. I mean, September number, October number to the rest of the year and even beyond. That's what I mean by the projection. Okay. Projections have shown clearly that inflation will continue declining. So we have our projections, and we have a vague idea of when we will hit single digit. And let me remind you, the objective of price stability, monetary policy all over the world, the objective, the target is single digit. Single digit remains the best global practice everywhere. Even any country that its inflation rate is very high is still targeting single digit. In fact, in advanced country, they look at 2%.
Dr. Obo, thank you, because this, hopefully, we are optimistic. We will get there to a single-digit inflation rate.
Yes.
We're hopeful, but yes, other factors.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
But
let me clarify the issue of the other factors.
Okay.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
So it is subject to a lot of factors. Yes, and economists talk about all things being equal. You get a point.
Yeah.
But even when we have shocks that try to shift those objectives, that's the essence of monetary policy. Monetary policy comes in with a lot of, decisions to be able to return inflation to a single digit.
Okay, let me seek your clarification. Professor Waleke mentioned something about alignment of resolutions with the banks, that the banks rarely or most times do not reflect these cuts.
Yeah.
So how do you monitor that banks stay on course?
Yeah. So what happened is that it's not only in Nigeria. Now, what happened to inflation as a whole, or interest rate as a whole, is that it is downward sticky. You will agree with me that anytime there's a raise in monetary policy rate, there's a raise, there's an increase. When we raise interest rate, banks quickly respond to it. You get the point? When you engage the banks, they now come up with a lot of excuses, structural issues, cost of operations, infrastructure challenges, and the rest of them. But with what government is doing in addressing all those other factors, our expectation is that banks should be able to reflect the cut, in the retail end of the market. When I talk about the retail, I'm talking about the lending rates now. So we are expecting the banks to respond to that.
I want us to look at the alignment, Professor Waleke, of the Fiscal Sustainability Act and then the midterm strategy that the CBN governor talked about. I mean, how do they align? How do they cooperate?
Okay, yes, you have raised a very important issue. When Doctor talked about the desire of the central bank to attain single digits, I quickly added ceteris paribus, other factors remaining the same. Now, part of those other factors also includes what happens, by the fiscal. Okay, that's the fiscal authority, because central bank. If you also check in that communique, in fact, in all their communiques, central bank has always been worried about the injections that usually happens, from the fiscal side, especially with respect to the recent increased surge in government revenues. You notice that most of the time, anytime you have FAC meetings and this federation account is distributed, what happens? You experience pressure in the forex market, okay? Which is also why, and I'm happy, the central bank now is in a position to defend Okay, we hear $43 billion, enough to cover over 8 months of import. So central bank is in a position now to, to defend that. But it's a reality that public sector funds, are being used to chase, forex. So the fiscals also tend to disrupt the intentions of monetary policy, which is also why I was very happy to read that the central bank is now in that MPC is now introducing, a special CRR. They call it 75% CRR for non-TSA public sector deposits.
Yes.
So that's a very beautiful, if you like, innovation.
Really?
Yes, it is.
Can you further explain that?
Okay.
Really?
Now, again, my experience and I was a former finance commissioner, so I can also explain that. A lot of states, have deposits, with the banks. States are not mandated to operate, federal TSA. So you will have your, deposits in commercial banks. There are also MDAs at the federal level. We understand that also are not, putting their funds in the Treasury single account. So usually when these funds come to subnationals, states and local governments, they are put in commercial banks, and you find commercial banks running after government, deposits. It is this deposit, much of it, that is also used to come to buy forex. So central bank now wants to make that move, unprofitable. Okay, so it wouldn't make sense for you to, for example, take, government deposits and you're promising 10% interest when the central bank is saying 75% of that must be locked up. 75% CRR means that 75% of the total thing you're getting must be kept with the central bank and sterilized. So you're only left with 25%. So it's a way to penalize that culture, if you like, and discourage it. So central bank is now saying that the banks should go more after the private sector deposits, collect them and lend to the real sector. That's what central bank is encouraging, as opposed to collecting just government deposits, and recycling them.
Does it affect MDAs?
Yes.
Because I'm asking, because even as it is now, MDAs complain bitterly of how the TSA is worsening, their liquidity. Now, if you are raising it to 75%, is it not paradoxical? I mean,
that is from 50% to 75%.
Yes, is it not giving the MDAs?
Yes, for commercial banks, the CRR, cash reserve requirement, was reduced from 50 to 45. For merchant banks, retained at 16%. But for deposits in commercial banks that are non-TSA, from the public sector that are non-TSA, those are the ones that you must drop as much as 75%. And I've given you the reason why central bank is doing that. Remember, central bank said it is to enable them manage liquidity. It's for liquidity management. And it is very, very, very true, because it is those funds that are actually putting the pressure, in the, particularly in the forex market. And that exchange rate has a pass-through to inflation, affects inflation. So when the central bank is saying that they will do all within, within their power to ensure that inflation continues to, trend downwards, this is one of it, to ensure that public sector deposits in banks are not used to, put a lot of pressure.
Would they not find new ways of doing it? Would they not find new ways of doing it?
Maybe Dr. Elmo.
So thank you, Prof. And he put it quite appropriately. Now, the 75% CRR, cash reserve requirement on non-TSA public deposits has no impact on MDA's access to their funds.
Okay.
The funds are safe. The central bank is not taking that fund away from them.
So what does it mean?
What that means is that any time those MDAs want their funds, they go to their bank. The bank will find a way of meeting the customer's need. So they have nothing to worry.
I heard that they will have to get a certification from the coordinating minister of finance.
No
certification.
No certification. Look, we have been implementing 50% CRR on all accounts. including your money in the bank, the money you deposit, 50% of it has been sterilized with the CBN. What it means by being sterilized, that the CBN has not taken it away from you. The CBN is saying, let's keep this so that you don't, benefit, there's no profit on it. It's your account. It's kept in the bank's account with the CBN. So the CBN has not taken it away. What it means is that we don't want you to trade with it. Because if you trade with it, it's going to increase the volume of liquidity and then increase inflation.
Okay.
Do you get the point?
Okay.
So anytime you go to the bank, even with the 50% CRR, no bank can deny you of access to your funds. In the same way, no bank can deny the MDAs of access to their money. Banks also have access to other deposits that they can use to be able to meet their daily obligation.
Okay.
Whatever the MDAs need, banks can provide to them. In a situation where banks cannot provide for them, the central bank make provision for commercial banks to borrow from the central bank. That is what he referred to as standing lending facility window, which we have now reduced, to now. So the banks.
How easy will it be when those MDAs want to make use of their money? Is it any time the MDA, assuming for instance, the NTA, for instance, I mean, we have needs of cameras, we have needs of things that we...
Go to your bank, you get your money.
Simple.
There's no,
just as simple as that.
There's no hindrance. The same way you go and access your account.
Yes.
Yes. So there's nothing to worry.
Dr. Elias, okay, let's bring you back into the discussion now. I mean, a lot of discussion on this deflation and stability in the foreign market and all that. But how clear and effective is this CBN's communication of these changes in the market? How clear is it to the public? You are an economist.
Right. So basically, it may not be clear to the general public, but like you rightly said, this will translate to what will happen day to day, and that's what the general public is expecting. The general public is looking at, if I go to markets and I want to purchase, how easy, how has the price actually reduced? And that was what he was talking about, the lag. That the period at which you start seeing those things happening
before it translates
down is the challenge. So for me, I think we must also have this reduction, perhaps maybe sustainably, maybe 3 times before we can now say yes. Public can now actually see it directly. But on a general note, we could see that things are actually coming down in terms of price of foods. But the challenge now is not the price of food. It's not the price of food coming down, but it's the purchasing power of Nigerians. Yes. You could have food at maybe 1,000 naira, but you cannot the affordability, and that's why Prof rightly told the doctor that ceteris paribus, all things being equal. For instance, we are looking at things coming down. You agree with me that most Nigerians now, our challenge is that most of our income are expended on food, right? And transportation. So if this can have a reduction, that's when Nigeria will now say, yes, I'm now getting better because of the things coming down. So we must now look at other variables. Now we must look at cost of transportation, cost of food, the supply chain problem, which perhaps may not be under the purview of the CBN directly. And these are the factors that will help the inflation to actually continue to go down. So we must work on that and see that all other things work in tandem with the forecast, like he's rightly said, that will work. And that also has to do with fiscal policy, direction. It's very, very important.
I still want to go back to the 75%, cash requirement for non-TSA funds. And I like the way you explain, things, and I want you to, candidly look at it. It's like you are saying to us, to your children, if you hide this money somewhere and I see it, I will hold it and lock it for you. Yes. Now, is it really fiscal discipline, or are you just worsening the case such that they will find another way of doing it?
Yeah, I like the analogy, but I don't think you're worsening the case. It's a fiscal discipline. You know, sometimes when you try to achieve something through moral suasion and it's not working, okay, you try to now put in place measures that will compel the entity you're regulating, you know, to comply. So I think that is what the central bank, you know, has done. I just mentioned it, you know, while I was talking earlier. If you read central bank monetary policy communiques, okay, over time, okay, before this one, you will also find central bank worried about the fact that what we can call a fiscal surprise, injections coming from the fiscal side are also disrupting, you know, monetary policy plans. So I think this is a novel way to address that, to say, because the pressure, we've noticed that the pressure is coming from public sector deposits, okay, let's sterilize some of these funds. And just as the director mentioned, it's not as if you can't access your funds. Your funds are still, you know, are still there. It's just that the central bank is saying they don't want that to contribute to the liquidity in the system, okay. If you also read the communique, this one they released, you would find there too that central bank is saying that part of why they did not apply a deep cut, okay, just 0.5%, which we have said, for me, you know, I described it as a slap on the wrist. It's very, very, very small. For me, it's simply central bank is sending a signal, you know, that they're ready now to change their policy stance. So the markets are now saying, okay, the future part of interest rates will be downward. So it's just a signal. It's very tiny. So the central bank is saying part of why they didn't really do a deep cut, is also because that they noticed that the banking sector is still awash with liquidity. It's there in the communique. It's still awash with liquidity. And the central bank says that there is that liquidity tool that is fueling, you know, demand pull inflation. In Ghana, recently, the Bank of Ghana, okay, implemented a 300 basis points, you know, cut in their own policy rate.
That's like 3%.
Yes, 3%. Yes, that's correct, 3%. So the Bank of Ghana was able to do that because of course, the conditions, okay, quite different from what we have in Nigeria. The Central Bank of Nigeria is saying there's still liquidity in the system. And in Ghana today, inflation rate is as low as 11%. Okay, in Ghana, the inflation band the Bank of Ghana has is between 8 to 10. In Nigeria, it's 6 to 9%. So our own central bank is working towards 9%. So to answer your question pointedly, I think the central bank, you know, took the right step, you know, by introducing this, you know, this special CRR requirement. I also want to recommend to the central bank that they should also find a way of incentivizing banks to now lend to the real sector. Okay, I did some analysis of some of these banks that have released their half-year results. Okay, and I realized that what you find there is, for most of them, their loan-to-deposit ratio has dropped below 50%. So the thing is dropping, and if you further do analysis, you see that lending to the real sector is reducing. So central bank can actually incentivize that. The last time I came on your program, I talked about sectoral allocation. Okay, they can use sectoral allocation, and they can also say, those of you that are lending to the real sector, we want to encourage you to do that.
Okay.
And they'll put incentives. Part of that incentives can be through a lower cash reserve requirement. That if you lend to the real sector, and we have evidence that you're doing that, instead of applying 45% CRR, okay, for those banks, we apply 40% or 35%. So it's an incentive to encourage banks to lend more to the real sector. Another thing the central bank can do, again, to celebrate banks that are lending to the real sector, okay, is to institute an annual award. Annual award for banks. Every year, the central bank, to be a big occasion, central bank will, you know, give certificates or handshake, whatever, to banks that are doing that. It's a way to encourage them. So I think the central bank should be concerned now that they are saying they want to, you know, support growth. By the way, in this latest GDP report, agri sector grew by just 2.8%. GDP is growing 4.23%, yes, but if you disaggregate the growth, the quality of growth, okay, the agri sector is still, lagging. The industry sector, yes, grew, but again, part of the industry sector is manufacturing. Manufacturing is still struggling. So the growth is still being powered by the services sector. And for the real sectors, the agri sector in particular, which employs more Nigerians to really, do well, I think the central bank can support that through getting the banks to also, lend to the real sector.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. We already have a lot of comments and questions from our viewers, which would like to read out so that Dr. Obo and the other guests can also respond to some of these questions. The first one is from Gilbert Alabi Diche from Jos. He said, what will be the consequences if the interest rate were reduced to as low as 15%? Now, this one is from Bashir Umar from Kano. He said, good morning. While inflation has decreased, it hasn't improved across board. Although food prices have dropped, cost of farm inputs like fertilizer, agrochemicals remain high. Nigeria should not rely on food import. We need to be able to produce what we consume and even export surplus. The next one is from Kashim. Oh, this one is from Edafi Amena. So my question is, how does this NPR affect the purchasing power in economy? Because the purchasing power is power for some of us who operate small-scale businesses. That is how it affects these small-scale businesses. Maybe Dr. Elias will respond to that afterwards. Hello, good morning, Nigeria. I'm Ikmat from Kuje. I really enjoy watching Good Morning Nigeria. Thank you, Ikmat. This one is good morning, all in the studio. My name is Lord George La. I'm listening to your discussion about the monetary policy. My keen interest is on the exchange rate between the Naira and the dollar. What we saw in recent days, the Naira has really appreciated. In this case, that is Dr. Obo from CBN is talking about single-digit target. What will be the rate between the Naira and the dollar when the economy hits single-digit target? Then let me just take this last one before you will respond. Then Claire will take our own questions. This one is from Ade to Beru Olumide. It says, it's alarming that whenever the CBN reduces interest rate, commercial banks will not respond. But anytime it's being increased, these banks are quick to increase their interest rate on the borrowers, that is their customers. Can there be a policy statement towards ensuring that commercial banks implement downward review of the interest rate for the borrowers anytime the CBN reduces interest rate? Dr. Obo.
Okay. Thank you very much. And the participation of the public is very important. And I must commend NTA for this platform.
Yeah, it's quite
because there are feedbacks that helps us to go and have another look at our policies. So somebody asked about the consequence of a reduction in the interest rate up to 15% and what that has on the purchasing power. What it means is that if you reduce the MPR or the interest rate that the bank is charging, what it eventually means is that you have cheap assets. Loan become cheaper, for banks to on-lend to customers, to the various sectors, the industries, the MSMEs, and so on. And if that happens, it means that their own cost of production has also reduced. And if your cost of production reduces, it means that the cost of the product, also reduces to the final consumer. Okay. So in that case, prices of items become cheaper. So it increases your purchasing power. Oh. That is the transmission, mechanism. So that is exactly what happened.
Spillover effect.
It's spillover effect. So it helps to boost your purchasing power. Okay. So that is it.
Sorry, Doctor. I think the question is asked. The intention is why is the CBN not dropping it to as low as 15%.
Oh, that's fine. That's
Yes,
fine.
yes.
Okay, simple answer.
Yes.
What happened is that if you drop sharply from what we have now to 15%,
Yes.
it means that you are releasing so much liquidity into the system.
Yeah.
Now there's a relationship between what we call money supply and inflation. Money supply is the total quantum of money in the economy, in the system. So that is the principle of inflation. Too much money chasing few goods. So prices rise. There's pressure on price. If everybody has so much money buying the same thing, then it now means that the price will rise. That is exactly what the central bank is doing. The central bank is controlling the volume, the quantity of money, and the price of that money, so that that increase is not so much to raise the price upward. So what it means is that having raised the interest rate up to that 27%, it tightens the volume of liquidity, the volume of money that is available to the public. Yeah. So you have to regulate that. You know, if you bring it down so much, then there's so much access to money in the system. And what it will trigger prices.
Price increase.
Yes.
So I think that's very simple.
Yes, very simple.
The response you earlier gave to was a response to one of the questions.
Okay,
you wanted
good.
to know how what you have done affects the pocket of the common man.
Beautiful.
And that is what you have done.
Okay.
Okay, what about the issue of the bank not, implementing?
Okay. So what happened is that we also need to know, Prof mentioned the issue of rewarding banks, and then asking incentives and the rest of them. So what happened is that we need to understand the trajectory and the history of where we are coming from. Once upon a time, there was a regime where central bank had to do credit allocation. Banks are instructed and directed to allocate credit to preferred sectors. In some cases, there were laws and policies, to say, look, banks must allocate 50% of their credit to the agri sector and the rest of them. Now we have moved from that regime to a market-driven regime where banks, decide where they need to lend to. You get the point? So you don't force bank. I agree on the principle of incentives and moral suasion. But in a market-driven regime, you allow market agents and entities to actually decide on where to lend to. So that is important. But that does not rule out the possibility of incentives and moral suasion.
But what then will be the essence of all this? It doesn't make sense.
No, I'm coming. This is where it makes sense.
Because
this is where it makes sense. This is where it makes sense. Now, the role of the fiscal authority is very prominent, and they are doing it. You have seen development institutions, development banks, like banks of industry, Bank of Agriculture, and the rest of them, even Development Bank of Nigeria. What they are doing is to de-risk some of these sectors. Because the question is, why is it that commercial banks are not lending to some of these critical sectors? So you now talk about the risk that is inherent in some of those sectors. So what is important is to ensure that the risk in them are minimized, to be able to encourage commercial banks, because commercial banks, remember, are in business. They are in business. They have to lend to sectors that they are sure they'll be able to pay back. You get the point? So the main issue is about de-risking. One of the risk elements in lending is even the real interest rate, the return on interest rate, which is a real return on interest rate, which has to do with inflation. If inflation is very high, then the return on investment is low.
Dr. Obo, we'll go on break in a short while, but I just want you to just listen, to just respond in just 30 seconds to this question that it says that when the single digit, that is the CBN is talking about single digit target, what would be the rate between the Naira and the dollar when the economy hits the single digit?
Definitely when inflation comes down.
Yes.
When inflation comes down,
yes,
we would expect the Naira to strengthen further.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
But the actual...
Thank you. We'll take a break
Dr.
now.
Yes, Dr.
When we
Obo.
return, we'll continue from where we start. Stay with us.
Of nationhood. What is your contribution to this journey? Join the NTA and an eclectic mix of everything Nigerian, from the academic deans to the street kings, who will lend their voices on the platform that has always been a part of the journey. The NTA on October 1st, 2025.
All right, welcome back to the program, and it's Good Morning Nigeria. Let me quickly take the next set of questions, messages that we have received, and the first one is coming in from Abu Tenenge. Abu Tenenge says the truth is that banks are not currently reducing interest rates on their lending. How is the CBN monitoring to ensure banks reduce the rates, and when CBN is reducing? I think Dr. Obo had answered this one. This is coming from, I'd like to get this name. No name here. Okay, he said, I think the central bank should look more into stabilizing the Naira. At least $1 to the Naira going for 1,000 Naira or 1,200 Naira at most will go a long way and make things more easier for Nigerians. And also make foreign exchange available in commercial for people to easily access, because scarcity of USD makes it go up when one wants to purchase from BDC operators. Good morning, panel of discussants. Please, to what extent will this 25% interest rate affect lending rate to small business customers at commercial banks? This is from Pastor Charles from Port Harcourt. Again, Dr. Obo, you want me to take that question? You got it?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good morning, discussant. I'm Haj Hudu Uswe from Kaduna. I'm of the opinion that the current decrease in inflation is due to the harvest season for the food crops. It is normal trend, annual trend. I will advise the CBN to also put policies to reduce the bank lending and savings to single-digit rates to stimulate economic development. I remember in the past when savings was 6% and lending rate was 9%. This is from Yusuf Sharif from Maiduguri. Kudos to CBN. Inflation is really coming down. This is beyond classroom analysis. In the past, a bag of beans came as low as 40K, maize 30K for 50 kg in the month of August. We pray it will be sustained when harvest months set in. Madam, grateful, inform the Director of Central Bank Monitoring Policy to direct the commercial banks to equally domesticate the lending rate reduction to customers as done by the central bank. Good morning, Nigeria. Please let this reflect on hospital bills, government schools.
Anyway, maybe you should just allow maybe...
No, the questions are for Dr. They're for the central bank.
Thank you very much. And let me thank Yusuf for appreciating what the central bank is doing, and all of you too. A lot of questions revolve around the retail lending rate by the banks. We would expect banks to begin to reflect the reduction in the monetary policy rate. We should expect that. And it's an appeal that since the rate at which they are going to borrow from the central bank has reduced, they should also transmit that decrease to the consumers at the retail end of the market. We will do that. And I will assure you that central banks have a platform where they interact with commercial banks. We have the bankers committee and the rest of that. So those issues are discussed around there. Somebody asked that we should strengthen, we should make available, the foreign exchange, the dollar and other foreign currencies. As at the moment, I want to assure the public that you have access to your dollar anywhere. In fact, you can now use, not just in Nigeria, you can use your Naira card offshore to access any foreign currency that you have. You have your Naira account, you can do that. If you go to your bank and you want to travel and you provide evidence of where you are going, you have access. The appetite for arbitrage.
Dr. Obo, it's not as easy as you're saying it.
No, but if you document, if you have your documentation,
with all the documentations, and they still tell you that they don't have enough.
Well, that will be strange. But let us know also that the bank have channels where the central bank has channels where if you face such difficulties, you can reach out.
Okay.
Yes, you can reach out.
All right.
Yes. The arbitrage between BDC and the official exchange rate has been abolished. So the rate you get at the BDC is almost the same rate you are getting in the bank. And where there are difficulties, please let the central bank know, and we will follow.
Tell us the channel.
So the channel, if you go to our website, there are a lot of channels on consumer protection. That's the department. And you can in fact write directly to the Director of Consumer Protection, Central Bank of Nigeria.
Okay.
Yes. There are phone numbers on all our, platforms, social media platforms, where you can reach the central bank. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dr. But thank you.
Maybe Dr. Elias, you want to also respond to some of these questions.
Right. I think the major thing is the question asks that how will it reflect on the MSME or strengthen the MSME?
Yes.
And I'd like to also speak to what Director has said, that since they cannot do intervention directly to intervene into to empower businesses directly, they can also go about sectorial support, like a professor actually said, because if you leave it open, finance sector will continue to take the lead, and it's reflecting actually in our GDP, because finance sector are actually doing well. But the main risk sector that can actually bring the real investment, that can help manufacturer, that can help small businesses, are not that empowered. You can see our industrial sector, our industry and our agricultural sector are not doing well. Now, coming down to MSME, now, the fact is that MSME employ more, over 50% in Nigeria. So to reflect what CBN is saying or what the economy is saying, it should be traced down the long run to these small businesses. If my business is 2 million naira and I need facility of 5 million naira to upscale, because the beauty of it is that you move from small business to scale gradually, and that's how our economy can actually move. People must scale from that small to medium, from medium to the next level, and it's by you having access to credit, and that's the key thing. So the lag time is the major issue now. Now we are for MBS the release is month on month. But the MPC, I'm sure the next one will be maybe in November, right? So for the lag between September to November, are we going to see the reflection of what's the reduction in the business? That's the question the person is asking. And it almost now goes back to CBN again. In as much as they have the power, also monitor them to be sure that they actually implement this, so that small business can actually have access, because it will trickle down, and it will be better for Nigeria economy.
I like that.
Let me just respond.
Yes, just
right.
Okay.
So the decision about NPR,
right?
The impact is instant. Yes, it is instant.
Right.
So the NPR, having been announced, is already implemented. Right. So there's no lag time with respect to that. Right from today, if banks are borrowing from the central bank, they are borrowing at the new rate. So there's no reason why that has to take time.
The trickling.
Yes.
The trickling, no, the trickling in the deposit banks, go?
Right.
The commercial
down
banks.
to the
So
the borrowers.
Small scale.
We should expect commercial banks to reflect the changes.
By your monitoring, that's how.
Yes, so we don't wait until November to do the monitoring, because central bank continues with its work.
It's just like fuel, though. It's just like fuel
What
price.
I'm actually saying is that it's not like MDS that will expect it. So this one should trickle down immediately so that it will have effect on the
yes. Okay, gentlemen. Professor Waleke, I was just saying, okay, look, our destination in terms of growth is between 8 and 10%, isn't it? Am I correct? In terms of GDP growth?
No. I think 4.5%.
No. I mean our destination, expected destination.
For GDP growth rates?
Yes.
No, okay, well, we have a $1 trillion economy we are targeting by 2030. Yes. And for us to achieve that, we need very strong GDP growth rates.
Of what?
Yes. At least more than maybe about 10%. Yes.
Mm-hmm. That's what I said,
yes.
Our destination.
Yes.
Right now, we are 4.3 from 3.13. It shows we're making progress.
We're
moving on. And my question is, how did we arrive at this? Do we now have a convergence of fiscal and monetary policy coming together to shake hands?
Yes. I think in recent times they are really talking to each other, and we're also seeing the results. Macroeconomic stability, whether in terms of GDP growth and then in terms of exchange rate stability. The disinflation we are witnessing. So I think all those are products of monetary fiscal policy, alignment. But I think going forward, particularly now that the government is saying the 2025 capital, budget component will kick in, from September 2025, it's important that the fiscal authority, gets this discussion with the monetary authority on the regularity of the releases, to also manage the injections. That's one. Number two, the issue of borrowing, because the more government borrows, that also has, that can also fuel inflation, particularly if the loans are not channeled to, productive uses. So on the fiscal side,
when you say government borrowing, what do you mean?
Government has been issuing bonds now. Borrowing particularly
from the bank, from the CBN.
No, from the capital market, for example, from the domestic market. Government bonds are issued in the capital market. Government has been borrowing. When government borrows, that's for long term. Of course, government also does short-term borrowing, through treasury bills. So all of that. Particularly the capital components. When you issue bonds, we expect that the money should be applied to capital projects. If you borrow and you use that for consumption, that will again fuel inflation. So that is, these are issues, around which the monetary and fiscal policies, should be, talking to each other. Now, I have this advice for the, central bank, based on what we also hear. The public say, and I'm happy the Director of Monetary Policy, is also here. The last time I came here, again, we were discussing this. The complaint was around, bank charges. So I'm happy to note that even the CBN governor acknowledged in that communique that 14 banks have now complied with the recapitalization, requirement. So I expect that part of what the central bank should be addressing now should also be the concerns of members of the public. Each time you go out and the issue is you're talking to a bank customer, the person is complaining about bank charges. So now that we have witnessed consecutive...
Thank you for bringing that up.
Yes. Dr. disinflation for a number of months.
Yes.
Okay, now that we're having exchange rate stability, now that things are beginning to stabilize, I think it is time for the central bank to revise their list of approved charges, downwards. Revise that and then make it public. Embark on massive sensitization. Let the public know this list of approved charges and what they need to do whenever they feel they are, shortchanged. I think
the central bank, even the telecoms.
Yes.
Even the telecoms. Even the
telecoms that you have to.
Yes.
And they have to the method of people withdrawing the money directly from your...
Dr. Obo, you want to respond to that?
Yes. Very, very, very important. And thank you, Prof, for flagging that. I think from time to time, the central bank have been revising bank charges, particularly. to reflect the prevailing rates. And I think it's important to take a look at that again. I agree. We've been doing a lot of sensitization, but there's much more to be done.
Absolutely.
So that is taken. That's well taken. Yeah.
Okay, as we begin to wind up this conversation, we just want to find out what factors is likely to influence the CBN's monetary policy decisions, probably in the next, coming months, and how might it impact the economy? Are we still going to see these kind of cautious stance?
Thank you. As the governor continued to explain, the decisions of the MPC are strictly driven by data. So what we have done now is to watch the impact of those decisions on the economy. And then beginning from today, there's a continuous process of monitoring the data, reactions, understanding how those decisions have trickled down. We expect, all things being equal, that inflation will trend downward going forward. We will monitor the volume of liquidity in the system and the risk to inflation to ensure that we don't reverse the gains of disinflation that we have achieved.
Okay.
So that we trend downward going forward to be able to get to a level that the economy will continue to stabilize. The key word the governor has been mentioning is about sustaining macroeconomic stability. This level of stability we have attained in exchange rates, in inflation, even in growth, we don't want to lose the momentum. So those data around those variables will determine the next line of action.
All right, let's quickly take 60 seconds.
Okay. Party shots from...
Yes, Professor Walike.
Yes.
I just want you to quickly speak on the currency denomination of our reserves and what that means, quickly for the investing foreign investment.
Okay, of course, if you're talking about the composition of the forex reserves, the dollar still has the bulk of it. Yes, I'm aware that central bank recently renewed the currency swap arrangements with China. We have some yuan there now, but I will also want a situation where the yuan component is further increased, so that we depend less on the dollar. But it's cheering to know that external reserves now is in excess of $43 billion, enough to finance over 8 months of imports. Overall, I want to commend the central bank, for what they have done, and the MPC members too for, being stage first. And I was happy to note again that central bank governor says going forward, whatever that they are going to be doing will be, data driven. So what that means is that I expect that by the time they meet in November, there's likely to be a further cut, in the MPI.
Okay, Dr. Elias, finally, beyond this monetary policy, what structural reforms would make future rate cuts truly impactful on the real economy?
Right. So I would like to go to trade policy. So because, monetary policy, fiscal policy, trade policy is very, very key. Because with trade policy, we can export better. And with the data we have now in terms of the economy, we must do more exportation so that we can actually get much more income, and Nigeria will be better. So I think we must look at trade policy because it affects virtually all things that we do. It will also bring balance of payments, balance of trade. So we must look at trade policy very well.
That's right. Let's look at trade policy very well. Okay, Claire?
Yes.
You have something to say?
No, I'm done. I'm done.
Okay, all right. So
yes.
Let's just start thanking our guest for today. First, let me just say thank you so much to Dr. Victor Orbor, Director of Monetary Policy, Department, Central Bank of Nigeria. Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
For
thank you
coming
very
to
much.
shed more light on the MPC resolution. Thank you so much. Also, I want to thank Professor Uche Uwalike, President, Association of Capital Market Academics. Prof, as usual, thank you so much.
Demola, thank you so much.
Looking forward to see you again.
Thank you.
I also want to thank Dr. Aliyu Elias, an economist. Thank you so much for your contribution on today's discussion.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, that's Good Morning Nigeria. We thank you very much for staying with us. I am Ademola Adeoye.
And I'm Claire Adelabu Abdulrazak. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye. For me?